Welcome, folks, to our project launch today. It's under a program funded by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in Australia. It involves technology impact assessment for peace and stability. And we've got a great team, all of whom are here today for you to meet, who are going to be conducting this work. We suspect there'll be even more excitement when we've conducted the work, but it's lovely to get going on this project after the long selection and negotiation of agreement process, and we can get down to the actual content and analysis and great work that we're all going to enjoy very much in working together. We've got a great team. You'll meet them today, and you'll get a bit of an understanding of where we're going, and we hope that will make you, for those of you who aren't part of the team, but learning about this, want to work with us in various ways. We're going to be seeking to enjoin stakeholders to work with us, to help us in various ways to get messages and get understandings, to get education products that will be widely used, we hope, and a final set of recommendations how to take this tough area forward. So thank you for joining us, and this is our launch today. I'll give you a quick outline, if I may, on the agenda, and we've welcomed folk for the moment, though we have a formal welcome to country to come. Then we'll get stuck into the project purpose to get you to understand what the big approach is we're interested in. Then we'll dig down into the research methodology and the education framework that will then make available that research methodology to interested professionals in the area. And that will then lead us to understand the project outcomes, including an emphasis on going beyond the project into a community of practice that can continue to work on these matters into the future beyond one simple funded project. So we thank the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade for joining us to do this work. We thank our colleagues in coming together to do this work, and we thank those who are participating today as attendees for being interested in this work. So thank you all indeed for your engagement with these issues, and let's come back to those the agenda, and at the end we'll invite people also beyond those participants who have got names here as members of the research and education process. Any others who'd like to make some comments or contribute, you'll have an opportunity at the end. You can put that in through a chat, or given the numbers, you may want to come in and do it in person. So either way, we'd be very pleased to hear from you towards the end. We'll try not to go beyond an hour maximum, particularly since it's a launch rather than the conclusion and reporting of the outcomes. But we'd love to get any guidance and feelings at the beginning, so that we'll know what to take account of as we proceed. And then we'll just move to a conclusion, and thank you all. But let me begin from the Australian perspective with acknowledgement of country. And so I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet today. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present. So broader welcome, if we can move on. And what we're going to do is move straight to a recording that was provided to us by the ANU Chancellor, the Honourable Julie Bishop, a former Australian Foreign Affairs Minister, who's in a plane on her way to Europe, but she kindly gave us this recording to open our proceedings today. So if we can play the recording.
Hi, Julie Bishop, Chancellor of the Australian National University. Congratulations to you all on the launch of the Joint Impact Assessment of Critical Emerging Technologies in Support of Peace and Stability project. I was delighted to hear that the project is a recipient of funding from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, a department I know and love well. This project promotes the novel idea of joint impact assessments of critical technologies by Australia and India in areas affecting peace and stability. It will complement the growing volume of such joint work with India being undertaken at ANU. Importantly, it aims to create a cooperative network in the two countries that will continue on after the grant has ended. On behalf of ANU, I thank our partners in India, with special mention to the Ministry of External Affairs for their commitment to this groundbreaking effort at the forefront of policy discovery in the Indo-Pacific. I'll watch with keen interest as the project team and collaborators execute plans to shape bilateral and multilateral approaches to emerging technologies affecting national security in the future. I wish you all the very best for the launch.
Well, it's very good from Julie. It's almost a recording she made on the way to the airport. So we're absolutely delighted that she was sufficiently committed to the project, which brings together her ANU role and her former foreign minister role in a way that also is developing our relations with India, to which she's strongly committed and was strongly committed as both ANU Chancellor and as Foreign Minister. Now, I'm Glenn Withers. I'm a Professor of Economics at ANU and Public Policy, and in the Crawford School of Government, and also in the Research School of Economics. But having now said who I am and what roles I play at ANU, I've got the delightful role of handing over to a couple of people who've got to explain to you a heck of a lot more about what we're going to do. Two key powers in our project are especially Greg Austin, who's a director of the Social Cyber Institute and the Associated Social Cyber Group. So I'll hand over first to Greg, and we'll follow up after Greg with Kartik Bapanad from the Include Labs. So first of all, over to you, Greg, for the introductions to the project. And we've got a little sort of bit of structure there for people to see what's coming under this heading, which is project purpose. We're going to look at the project objectives, project structure, role of the key stakeholders, and what we see as its contribution and knowledge. So over to you. Thanks, Greg.
Well, thank you, Glenn. Good afternoon, colleagues, and welcome to the participating specialists who decided to join us. I'm very excited by this project. I've been watching governments in Australia and elsewhere in the last decade, and even back to 2012, struggle with questions of the security and trust of foreign-produced technologies. We can see that the responses by governments in Australia have been largely ad hoc, leaping around from different types of response, somewhat confused and lacking what you might call public justification for the decisions that are being made. So we saw this grant opportunity funded by the Department of Foreign Affairs as a good way of joining the debate about how to make technology assessment more rigorous so that the public could understand what's going on and so that government officials could give better advice to their ministers. In Australia right now, we're trying to decide whether we ban social media apps for under 16 people, and the government has displayed an amazing lack of ignorance of the difference between these various apps. So it's a great opportunity, and especially as India and Australia deepen their partnership in critical technologies, I think we can make a good impact with this work. We've introduced a novel idea in international relations, or in bilateral relations at least, for joint technology impact assessments. This is a sort of track 1.5 effort, bringing together officials, specialists, and stakeholders from the two countries, where we think we can only look at one or two major areas of technology for this purpose. Of course, we may, in our research and discussions, cover many, but at the end of the day, if India and Australia are to undertake joint technology assessments, it's really only going to be in one or two fields at the outset. Our aim, as others have said, is to leave in place a new self-organising community of practice who see value in wider dissemination and wider international application of the work and the ideas that we develop on more rigorous joint technology impact assessment. Thank you, Glenn. Over to you, Kartik.
Thank you, Greg. So the project team comprises of experts from Australian National University, Southern Cross University, Social Cyber Institute, and Blended Learning International from the Australian side. Include Labs from the Indian side, with Takshashila Institution as a knowledge partner, and Professor Katina Michael from Arizona State University. the project is structured to have two key outputs and three supporting outputs. At the core of the project are the two research papers. Katina and Bharat will talk in more detail about the research papers in a bit. Uh, in support of these two research papers, the project will also prepare two briefing papers and a professional education syllabus. The first briefing paper, which will be launched today, will be an introduction to the project to all stakeholders and will also be used to provide an overview of the project, its objectives, and the anticipated outcomes. The second briefing paper will be prepared at the end of the project and it will be a summary of the key outcomes of the project. Like Greg mentioned earlier, the project will also develop a professional education curriculum that could be used to train those who will be involved in the conduct of technology impact assessments beyond the lifespan of the project as well. So we will cover the educational framework in more detail later in this session. As part of the project, we'll also be conducting periodic webinars and workshops to obtain further insights from experts and the wider community for our research work. We also intend to have external independent experts who will evaluate and provide feedback to our research papers. Our pursuit in this project will be to develop an overarching framework rather than a narrow framework that is focused on a specific technology. We also intend for the project to set up a community of practice that will continue to leverage the frameworks and models developed as part of the research work and support the conduct of joint bilateral technology impact assessments between Australia and India. So with this introduction of the project, I'll now hand over to my colleagues Katina and Bharat to give an overview of the research methodologies.
So let's move on to the actual research methodology we're adopting. And I think we're starting with Bharat from Include Labs. Bharat, ready? And then Katina Michael from Arizona State University. So Bharat, your turn.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn, and thanks, Greg and Karthik, for setting up the scope of the project. So if we move to the next slide, you'll be able to see the broad areas of interest for this project. So the project will largely focus at the intersection of critical and emerging technologies, tech impact assessment, and peace and stability. Now, when you look at in the information age, there's a pacing gap between governance and the adoption of technologies and the rapid development of new technologies, right? So, and this gap is widening as there's the pace of adoption is fast, and there's also a lot of uncertainty about what are the opportunities and costs associated with these technologies. So in such an environment, a rigorous and evidence-based understanding or analysis of the impact of these technologies on society, individuals, markets, governments is very crucial to be able to govern it effectively or to take policy decisions on regarding these technologies. So that's one aspect. On critical and emerging technologies, we see that there's a very broad scope of what falls under critical and emerging technologies. So a lot of countries have defined broad lists of technologies, and it's hard to prioritize something when you have such a wide scope. So when we're looking at India and Australia doing something, collaborating together, the 2020 bilateral agreement on cooperation between India and Australia that provides some clarity on what are technologies of shared interest so that we can maybe prioritize those when we're looking at these joint assessments. So these are largely technologies which have an impact on the innovation economy, cybersecurity, cyber-enabled critical and emerging technologies. So these are broad criteria that have been identified in the Joint Action Plan. So some of the technologies that can fall in this are AI, 5G, quantum, space, and digital public infrastructure. Especially, I think India and Australia are collaborating are considering deploying some of these technologies in the Pacific Islands. So so that's also an area of interest. So the third area of interest that we're looking at is peace and stability. So Australia and India share concerns about the harmful actions of certain actors on these two countries. So there are shared concerns, shared interests, shared values, and there's also the rapid adoption of technology and the evolving geopolitical landscape, which adds further complexity to this entire analysis. So broadly, we will be trying to work at the intersection of these three areas and try to develop a framework for analysis of these technologies that focus on these three things. Now, if we go to the next slide, as Karthik was talking about, we can see what are the broad areas, I mean, the key outcomes and deliverables from the project. So we'll start off with the project launch, which is today. And we'll also be publishing a briefing note, which will cover the scope of the project, the objectives, and set out what we plan to do over the course of the year. Those are the research outputs that you can expect that the project will deliver. So there are two research papers like Karthik was talking about, a syllabus and a briefing note at the end summarizing what the findings from the project. There are also a lot of webinars, workshops, interviews that we'll be conducting over the course, and these serve multiple objectives. So one is to build that community of practice. Another is to gather inputs about current practices, find what the gaps are in between the best practice and how tech impact assessment works in the two countries, and broadly to disseminate some of the findings from the project as well. So with that briefing, I'll hand it over to Katina to talk you through the overview of the project methodology.
So over to Katina. I might mention, as we've said, Katina's from the Arizona State University, but she is from the delightfully named School for the Future of Innovation in Society and the School of Computing and Augmented Intelligence. So what could be more appropriate for our project than that background, Katina? So over to you, please, for your insight on this.
Thank you, Glenn, and thank you, Bharat, and all the previous speakers. ASU is really excited to be part of this international team. It's a truly transdisciplinary team, bringing together a lot of different skill sets with diverse methodologies being melded in. Nothing to hide that many of our staff in the academic realm at ASU have actually worked for government, and one of our members was part of the Office of Technology Impact Assessment there in the 80s before it was rebadged and reoriented. But we even started a Masters of Science major concentration in public interest technology, where one of the core subjects that we teach there is on technology impact assessment. And so we are hoping that we are also educating so many people to come into government and industry with a background ready to go in technology impact assessment. Really what we want here, I'm going to call it the 4 Ps, really to identify that purpose that Karthik talked about, the plan of action, which Greg was talking about, the process which Bharat took us through, and how we get into practice with all of these things. These are the 4 Ps, and you'll see our phases here divided into those 4 sections. To begin with, a definition, really what's out there on technology impact assessment. Some people have called it ethical impact assessment or global impact, or some kind of derivative thereof. What is technology impact assessment? And many of us have been sold the idea it's a product. It's a document that perhaps lists 10 top technologies that are complex and emerging, and how we deal with them and what their consequences are. But perhaps we want to stress here that technology impact assessment is a process. But really look at that open literature that we have access to as academics, as industry personnel, as white papers from government, and delve into that, knowing full well that there are so many closed aspects of TIA. But really, we want to also establish the ecosystem at large. Who are the stakeholders, primary, secondary, and so forth, that make up the audience and those involved in the production of technology impact assessments, and how are they utilized and where? And perhaps what are the government policies out there that espouse the need for these processes? In our second phase is the intervention phase. Perhaps we can call it a socio-technical intervention. We often hear the word technology impact assessment, but perhaps we want to broaden that out to a socio-technical impact assessment, where we not only invite technological perspectives, but also social and environmental. Environmental being those rules, regulations, and policies that help us to understand how do we utilize tech impact assessments in the real world. Again, this multi-stakeholder approach, for whom are technology impact assessments for, and who contributes to them? Certainly the public has had an isolated view of these things. Their participatory actions haven't really been recognized, but how do you open this up? And these are things that we're postulating at the moment once we've completed our thorough literature survey and landscape analysis, but also to look at it from a multi-level analysis perspective. Micro, meso, and macro, right from the individuals and employees in organizations right through to organizations themselves, and then governments, and through a collaborative process that's open and transparent. Once we've put that intervention into place, stressing the joint and collaborative nature of our work, we want to test this with the community, and some of our workshops and webinars, as Bharath said, will be about testing the ideas we have formed as a community. And there, the reconfiguration takes place in the third phase, where we start to look at the public-facing nature of technology impact assessments towards bilateral agreements and multilateral thereafter. And this continuous monitoring. Tech impact assessments are not one-off things, they're continuous, and technologies are not siloed. Today, in our complex mesh network, we can understand technology as an entangled phenomenon that's very much meshed and interdependent and interconnected. And finally, we hope through these 8 webinars, these workshops, and this continual feedback we'll receive from the global community with an emphasis on India and Australia, that we may form a community of practice by which we can, together in a transdisciplinary manner, create a self-organizing, self-sustaining community that will implement this in practice, going from that purpose, plan, process into the practice element. And finally, just some contextual information. We are focused on India and Australia, but we'd like to open up this to expert participation across the world. If you're interested in listening today and want to participate, please give us your feedback at the end of the webinar. But really, we're collecting data at this stage. We are going to do up to 20 expert interviews focused on Australia and India, but also with global experts. The analysis will take the form of literature reviews in a qualitative thematic analysis manner, going through to design workshops where we emphasize co-design and participation towards co-creation of these artifacts and processes and reconfiguration that we're saying no longer should we be doing individual, countrywide, nationwide, merely tech impact assessments, but going towards joint. And finally, of course, as Bharath stressed, the delivery of our briefing reports, our 2 research papers, and the educational programs, which I think you'll be wishing to hear more about. So over to you, Glenn, again.
Thanks so much, Katina, for that excellent overview of where we're going and our ambition and our inclusiveness, please, if people would take note of that invitation, both for the current project, because of the way we're proceeding, which will be interacting with experts and stakeholders, but also into the community of practice phase afterwards. And one of the transitions into the community of practice will be education products associated with our analysis in this area. And we want these to be open education products. For those of you familiar with us, you might be aware of many of our own endeavours in the past to work into developing micro-credentials, professionals and mid-career officials and the like. And we see this as quite congenial and compatible with this project, now taking that enthusiasm into this area of critical emerging technologies and making ways of assimilating that, dealing with it, preparing for them, and adjusting to these emerging changes through the education process is the best way forward. So let me hand over now to Lisa Maturano, the CEO of Blended Learning International, to talk about this educational framework that we'll also be integrating into our analysis as we proceed over this project. Lisa, over to you.
Thank you, Glenn, and good afternoon, colleagues. I should say it is indeed an honour to be part of this project and to be able to address everyone today on this initiative, which I believe, and I know everyone believes, is of great importance. One that does underscore our shared commitment to ethical government, technological leadership, and the pursuit of peace and stability in our increasingly interconnected world. As Glenn said, at the heart of this initiative does lie a comprehensive professional education approach that equips stakeholders, that is, government officials, policymakers, and industry leaders, with the tools and insights needed to navigate these complexities. Central to our strategy is the development of a short course syllabus and a series of 8 webinars, and you may recall from Bharat's earlier the slide that Bharat was talking to earlier, just what the timeline for those webinars are and how they do interconnect with the research. These educational components are designed not only to inform, but also to foster a shared understanding of best practices for technology impact assessment. And as Katina did say, in the longer term, the initiative's reach extends beyond Australia and India, and bringing together key stakeholders from around the globe to explore common solutions. So it is a terribly, terribly exciting initiative. And furthermore, what I do need to add is that participant feedback is going to play a critical role so that we can gather insights after our sessions, and where this iterative process then will guarantee that the initiative remains relevant and meaningful in addressing the challenges posed by critical emerging technologies, if indeed we do use that terminology. So it's more than just a series of events. It is a bridge. It strengthens bilateral ties between India and Australia, and also demonstrates our collective determination to shape a future where technology serves as a force for good. So at Blended Learning, we're very, very excited in being part of this and working with our colleagues to develop a really impactful educational program as a result of the research that will be taking place. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your engagement.
Thanks so much, Lisa, for that overview of the education area. I should also indicate that our host today was Adam Henry, who is something of a global expert on cyber education in particular, but also new technology education. And he's going to be closely involved working with Lisa and also with our friends from Include Labs on getting the Indian perspective, so that we have this benefit of the project, which was deep expertise combined with comparing cultural approaches and seeing how convergent the expertise drives what you do compared to your cultural context and background. And so we're going to be designing the project to benefit from both of those insights. And that's, of course, exactly what's intended by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and especially in our case between India and Australia as key emerging partners in the Asia Pacific. So we've got a lot to look forward to there. I don't know, Adam, if you want to add anything from your educational background, or do we move straight on to the project outcomes? But you've been deep in this area for a long while, so this is a quick opportunity if you wish, but otherwise you can claim to be hosting and therefore quite preoccupied.
No, all good. Thank you, Glenn. Very excited about the project, very excited about the opportunities internationally to collaborate, both Australia and India and beyond. We're very keen to post this project, develop a critical syllabus and curriculum that can be used into the future for this. So thank you for that, but we'll keep, I won't take up too much time. But yeah, thank you, Glenn.
Okay.
Move on.
So we've outlined so far the general nature and intentions of the project, the way in which the research component will then proceed to inform our increased understanding of these areas, and then how we're going to ally that with educational insight and products that will be able to transmit that knowledge in a wider way. And of course, as is appropriate with knowledge transmission, you get feedback. You get a lot of insight from seeking to transmit that knowledge as well as create that knowledge. And we're keen, of course, to see the interaction of those both in our way forward in this project and beyond into the community of practice that we expect and hope will be following. So now let's look at this outcome of the project and talk a little about the project outcomes. And we've got Kartik Bapanat from Include Labs opening that up, to be followed by Greg Austin from Social Cyber Institute. Kartik, back to you.
Thanks, Glenn. So our pursuit in this project will be twofold. One, to develop an overarching framework that could be used for conducting impact assessments. Two, the project will aim to build a community of practice that will carry forward the work after the completion of the project lifespan. We expect this community to have representatives from industry, academia, civil society, and the government, who could then come together and use the impact assessment framework, which is developed as part of the project, for specific use cases. For such a community of practice to contribute, it would invariably need support from the government on both the sides. So as part of the project, we will build a case for the government support and recommend models for building and carrying forward the community. So these are the key outcomes that we expect from the project. Glenn, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kartik. And don't forget, associated with this is a strong invitation to participate. So we keep emphasizing that. We want to work with stakeholders and experts so that we've already got the synergies of a wonderful core group, but we want to expand that way of creating knowledge through synergy and interaction. We have a view that, of course, deep diving desktop research and laboratory research is absolutely crucial to the creation of knowledge, but also the interaction of those involved in that creation of knowledge and transmission of knowledge begets greater knowledge and makes it available to wider groups, wider audiences, and that's the big payoff for our societies. And in an area like this, the payoffs are going to be absolutely crucial for our futures. And so we find the project at an exciting juxtaposition in our development in human knowledge and human societies. And so we're very excited to be participants in that. But Greg, you want to follow up too with the project outcomes, please?
Yes, thanks, Glenn, and thanks, Kartik. I think we want to have policy influence in this project. And building policy influence is not easy. So it involves talking with the stakeholders. It involves socializing new ideas with the stakeholders. And it involves some thoughtful scaffolding or architecture by specialists to help the stakeholders reach new points of view. I think at the very least, we want to be a bit disruptive to the past practices where governments look disorganized and disjointed and uncoordinated in the way they treat various technology impacts, especially the social impacts. So we want to avoid the situation that we saw through the period from about 2012 to 2018, where governments around the world were trying to work out whether they should ban Huawei and 5G from their systems and how they should do it. And the discordant sorts of assessments that arose in that process are really a lesson for us in how we might work better together. And the bottom line here is that as Australia and India seek to align their policies on critical technologies, then it stands to reason that they should both be interested in joint assessments of these various emerging technologies. And I think that we can take the view that such joint assessments involving specialists and officials from both sides, such joint assessments would not only be desirable, but are actually essential in terms of helping these two countries align their policies on critical technologies. Thank you, Glenn.
Right, thank you for that. Those injunctions, Greg, and being clear on our way forward. So we think there's going to be great synergies and productivity coming out of this. So that's our our perspectives from the, as it were, the official structure of what we're putting forward. But we do have a couple of team members that may wish to also add their perspective on this, and then we'll open it up to any other questions or comments that any of the other attendees might want to make. But let me hand over to Pranay Kostatoni from the Include Labs if he wishes to make any comments, followed by Brendan Walker-Munro from Southern Cross University, who are part of the official group associated with the work. Brendan from Southern Cross University brings a legal perspective and rights perspective to many of these issues. So, Brendan, how you see us going forward on this?
Thanks very much, Glenn. So my perspective on the project is very much looking at it from both the legal, but also the kind of the policy restrictions that a lot of particularly government stakeholders tend to look at when it comes to technology assessment or technology impacts. So the blunt the blunt object is usually just a ban. We're not going to use this technology because it might undermine peace and stability. But then you are really kind of hampering your innovation. You're stalling the potential for domestic firms to be able to benefit from the use of that technology. You're stopping domestic universities from conducting research into that technology. And so it's really a much more nuanced kind of environment for those types of activities. And so I think looking at it from the lens of having a variety of different tools and in the toolkit essentially to deal with the potential consequences that come from these types of emerging and disruptive technologies, I think is going to be incredibly crucial going forward. So very excited to be part of the project. Thanks, Glenn.
Thanks so much, Brendan. Pranay, over to you.
Hello, everyone. I don't know if my videos are visible to you all, but I'm very happy to be a part of this project. And what Glenn said right in the beginning, we have an example where there is now a ban on social media for under 16 kids. So that is just an example of how governments and technology assessments are much more relevant, and they should be done much earlier in the cycle. So really happy, and we've been working on these questions earlier as well, trying to look at how social impact assessment of technology should be done. And Australia has done tremendous work on this in terms of the fact that it has an ambassador for cyber affairs and critical technology, and there's a lot of work being done at trying to understand the social impact of technology. And now I think this project can help us take the next step and give concrete ideas on whenever an emerging technology comes into the picture, what are the steps that we can take in order to do a ex-ante assessment of the impact on individuals, markets, governments, on geopolitics. And if we are able to come up with that kind of a framework, I'm sure it will be helpful not just for India and Australia, but to many other countries in the world. So I'm happy to be a part of this. Thank you.
Absolutely excellent. Thank you, Pranay. And we're looking forward to that interaction as we go forward. Moving to the invitation to participate slide, what we're going to be doing, repeating the invitation for people to come in and join us in various ways. And in particular, if you're interested in joining us in the workshops, we'll be looking at best practices for forecasting or diplomatic strategies to set bilateral policies, or our webinars, where we're going to have those virtual sessions of interaction through the experts and the stakeholders. Just by all means, simply send us a line of interest and let us know, and we'll be very pleased to invite you to join us for some or all of those activities that you're interested in what we're doing there. And we'll give you the contacts at the end of the slides today for who to get in touch with, to make sure you can let us know about that interest that you've got, and we'll be pleased to take advantage of it and work with you. So I think we'll give you those contacts in a moment. I would mention that we're also going to be issuing our first briefing paper very shortly, so be able to see the detail of the project in a lot more depth than we've been able to give you today, and that will be issued on the Social Cyber Institute and other ways over the next few days, and that'll give you some greater detail about how the project intends to proceed, and you can see which bits you're very, very interested in. I was just going to thank people very much, but Kartik, did you have any wider conclusions at this point beyond what we've said so far? And otherwise, we'll thank everybody for their participation, particularly getting late on a Friday for many of us. So we appreciate the commitment everybody's made. Could we please, Adam, skip to the last slide so people can quickly note how to make contact for follow-ups? And I'll invite Kartik to make any concluding comments he wants to make. And then I'll thank everybody and we can finish for the day. But there's the contacts. Our two crucial coordinators will be Lisa Matarano and Kartik. And there's the emails for getting in touch, letting us know you want to be involved in some of the activities that are coming up, and we'll be back in touch with you on that basis. So we'll be very pleased to hear from you. Kartik, anything more from you before we finish up?
Yeah, just wanted to pass the message again. So we solicit the support of today's invitees as well as all stakeholders for this exciting project. We request you also to put us in touch with other parties who could be interested in the work we are doing. This will help us reach out to a wider network of experts, not just provide insights into our research work, but also potentially be part of the community of practice that will continue the work after the conclusion of this project. So with that, I'll conclude my remarks. So thank you all for your support.
Thanks, Kartik. Thank you all for your interest. Thank you all for your enthusiasm, and thank you for your future contributions and commitments. And now we'll leave that for the day, and we'll be back in touch again in the future. Thank you very much.